Welcome back to the Raptors 905 podcast. I'm Savanna Hamilton, of course, alongside, he's back again, guys, my co-host, Charles Kissy.
You can't get rid of me.
Apparently not, but who do we have as a guest today?
We have Tenneya Martin, and I've said this before. I'm so excited to not only have her on our podcast, but also for others to get to know her, because she is such a special human being, and you know, we mean that truly. So really pumped to hear her story, and really pumped to hear all the great things that she's doing.
Absolutely. She has an incredible journey to the Raptors 905, of course, and we're going to get to hear that just in a second. But without further ado, let's bring on Tenneya Martin. Tenneya Martin joins us now. She's a team operations coordinator for the Raptors 905. I had the privilege of covering her story, her feature on the Raptors 905 YouTube channel. Of course, Tenneya, it's such a pleasure to interview you back then, so I'm happy that we could dive a little bit further into your details of your story, because you have so much to share, and I just cannot wait.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited. I'm an avid listener of the podcast, so I'm very excited to be featured. I hope this time I don't cry on camera. Thanks for that, Saf. But well, let's do this.
Oh yeah, no, for for the listeners, when I was interviewing Tenneya for the feature, me and Dwayne, which is another producer at the network, we're almost like not placing a bet, but we're almost putting money that she would cry during the feature. But that's not the intention today. I promise you that. No behind the scenes bets with me and Kissy today.
Perfect. And for those of anyone that's listening that knows me, you know that's not a hard bet. It's not a hard bet to win. I'm a mush for sure.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a bet I would have taken if I was in on it, because you don't just cry for tough things. You just cry because you wear your heart on your sleeve. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, I cry at everything. I recently watched Luca, unofficial Disney plug, but I just watched it and I bawled the whole time. So like, it's not a hard feat.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, it's okay. It's okay to express the emotions. Let them all out. I love it. Let's just start from the beginning, honestly. Like, I want to know where your love of basketball came from, and then we'll go from there into how you got connected with the 905.
Oh, from the beginning. Shoot. Okay.
From the beginning.
Back in time. So I started playing basketball, I think when I was like 5 or 6, just club league, and I am socially awkward. So I came into the gym and hated it. I hated every second of it. I cried and I cried and I cried. And then I found what everyone finds, or most people find in basketball, which is a community. And I fell in love with everything. The way the gym smells, the bounce of the basketball, the sneaking of the shoes, every cliche thing that you can think of is what spoke to my soul. And then I guess from there, it just progressed, and I started playing at more competitive levels for like junior Huskies and high school, et cetera, club teams. And then I didn't grow. So it was time to pivot and figure out a new way to get into basketball.
What position did you play then?
Point guard.
Appropriate.
Very appropriate for a 5'2", yeah.
and T still got some game. So back, when I was with the 905, we'd have those staff runs, right? The notorious staff runs, and she can get up and down the floor and make it happen. You didn't grow in physical size. You just grew in heart and character and all the rest. So take that. And you have a crazy shoe game. Like you just, I wouldn't say it's crazy like you got a million pairs, but you got style. Talk about that.
Thanks. I really like that you guys are pumping my tires. This is a great place to be. Shoes, I am not a sneakerhead. I am new to the sneaker game. I am not a Shelby Weaver. I am take what you can get. Being in basketball, you do kind of get access to the shoe world, which allows for you to get a little bit more eclectic with your shoes. Plus, I am a product of the John Wiggins mentorship, so he kind of forces you to figure out your shoe game for sure.
I know where you're sitting right now. You're sitting in the one of the offices, one of the equipment room areas for the 905. Talk about how you got there. What was that like? How did you make it there? And I mean, you're gonna be doing such great things. We can get into that later, but how did you get to where you're sitting right now?
it's a pretty weird process. I wasn't the Dan Tolsmans who figured it out at like age 10. I was the lost and confused until around 22. I went to different universities for different things. I thought I wanted to be a nurse, then I thought I wanted to be in nonprofit business, then I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I thought I wanted to travel, and I wanted to be anything and everything. So I actually stumbled upon the Durham College program because I went to Cuba with a couple of my girlfriends to celebrate their wins of figuring out what they wanted to do. And we met a couple of people who were actually taking that program, and then I applied, and the rest was history. I went backpacking with a girlfriend, came back, and was in Oshawa that fall. So from there, it was just a lot of volunteering experience. So it was mega city, it was on point, it was Raptors 905, and coming from Oshawa, that means 2-hour bus rides to and from, long nights, but great basketball.
Absolutely. And like, go ahead, Charles.
No, I was going to say that's, it's a common story, and that's part of, and I'm glad you're saying it too and sharing it. The sacrifice that you have to make, right? That you just, if you want it, here are some of the things you have to, not glamorous, the bus rides are long, whatever it might be, but that's the reality to be, because oftentimes people just see the seat you're sitting in and they don't know the path and the work and the sacrifice that it takes to get there.
Yeah. And like, sorry, what speaks to me as well, it's just jumping off of Kissy's point there, is the fact that like you really followed your passion there. Like, you were figuring it out. You had multiple different routes that you could have taken. You're very smart, so I'm sure any one of them would have worked out for you. But you chose a non-traditional route at the end of the day. That's very new for, like, if you look in the context of sport history, for women to be in these spaces, let alone women of color. But you're now a team operations coordinator, as I said off the top. What do you do exactly? Explain to the people who don't know what a team operations coordinator does.
Everything. Just say everything.
I think at G League, it varies a lot from an NBA team ops, but on G League, I think everybody does everything, to be honest. We take on a lot of different roles. We manage a bunch of different aspects of the team. Major concerns for me are budget, scheduling, practice bookings, practice facility bookings, and then just day to day. So I'm in charge of player housing, but also with the relationship of MLSC and how that coincides with our team. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a lot of different tasks day to day, but that's what makes it so great.
What's your favorite part of the job?
Ooh, my favorite part is that I will never have the same day. I've never had the same day, and I've been here for 3 years. Yeah, this is July 1st will be the start of my 4th year. I have never had the same day, not one day since I started. So I love that. If you know me, which Charles and Savanna, you do, I'm pretty spontaneous with my personal life. So I like to roll off the seat of my pants. So I'm a huge fan of every day is different, because I'll get bored really quickly.
And so I'm the same way. And I honestly, I would say that about my careers. I've been lucky to have jobs where every day has been different. I don't know if I could go to one of those like standard, not that there's anything wrong with it for those out there listening who have the same day every day. Some people like that. But I think for us, we're kind of blessed in that way, right? To be able to do something different every day. I want to move to something, and I just earlier today got off, as some of you know, I also work in equity consulting and do some work in that space. And I know T and we've had lots of conversations over the years about equity before any major social justice movements of our time have happened. There are always people talking about these issues, and there are always people doing work in this space. And obviously in the last few weeks and up until today, I'm hearing the discovery of hundreds of bodies of Indigenous people, I would say, that were directly related and as a result of mistreatment. I mean, of its purest form, um, in residential schools. We've had some conversation about this, T. And first, let me say before I ask you any questions, that we constantly talk about, we constantly say, I think we're getting to this place where we're saying all the right things around issues of equity, whether it be, our Indigenous populations, whether it be Asian populations. We're going through these different sort of ranges, and we're constantly we're continuing to say the right things. I think if there was ever a time, and we've had so many examples of how far we have yet to go and how real the challenges are, like how real they are, not like, oh yeah, but, oh no, but the government helps. And there's always a rebuttal to most of the challenges. I think if there's ever any debate, if you're still debating it at this point, if you're still feeling like we don't have a problem, not just with racism, but systemic racism with sort of overarching inequities and inequalities and so on and so forth, then at this point, there is it's almost a lost cause, because those lives will never be brought back clearly. The issue that exists will stay here. And either you are officially, I would say, not that you weren't before, but I think it's pretty hard to deny now, you're either in or you're out, right? In terms of acting and steps forward as far as changing what's happening. Now, you can't change the past, but as we move forward, there's a lot we can do to not only acknowledge, but to begin to repair. And we have to start taking steps forward. I'm not saying moving forward, moving on. I'm saying changing now what's continuing to happen, acknowledging. What are your thoughts? I know it's super heavy. I know Saskatchewan is your home. I know you make Ontario your home now, and I know we've discussed this before, but share a little bit, as much as you're comfortable with. How are you feeling? Where do you sit right now?
I think you did a really good job of summarizing it all. It's it's a lot. It's a lot of things coming to surface recently. And like you mentioned, Saskatchewan is my home province, so this one hits a little harder than usual. But for me, I think exactly like you said, like it's time to put up or shut up. Like, it's great, you're saying all the things, you're saying all the kind things, and I have a ton of DMs being like, oh, I hear you, I see you. And it's like, great, where's your money going? Are you following Indigenous influencers? That's the bare minimum. Stop asking me for resources. You have Google. Like, I am here if you want to have an actual conversation, but I'm not here for this, like, don't get me wrong, I love to get my tires pumped. I love it. I love every minute of it, but I am not here for this performative action of, I hear you, I see you, and then you go and purchase things that greatly affect the Indigenous community. So today is a very hard day, but I think like you said, the only way to go from here is up. The only way to go is to get better. And I think that there's conversations that are happening, and now it's just time for action to happen.
What's frustrating to me is the fact that, so I'm thinking about this in a bigger picture scheme of things as well, is the fact that, so next week is Canada Day, and in school I feel like there was injustice even happening within our own education system, the way that we grew up through. The fact that they really did a disservice through our own education of what really happened in Canada. They glossed over a lot of the pain and the hardships that the Indigenous community in Canada has faced, and they almost made it as a celebratory thing to, then Canada was established and everything was great, and James Cook and all these discoverers, quote, quote, that they framed it as, just gloss that over. And now here we are, at least I feel personally, as like myself today, mid-20s, getting to know the real history. I've taken a few training programs myself, and I feel like I've only started to learn a lot now. I was even checking myself recently because I went to Ryerson University, and for 4 years of me attending Ryerson University, I was not quite fully aware of what the school was named after. And it wasn't until my 4th year of university where I had an Indigenous classmate that told me the full story about Ryerson. I literally felt disgusted that I even went to the school. I was like, are you kidding me? This is what it's named after. As we saw the statues being pulled down. So, I mean, this is kind of more me ranting than anything else. But, you know, it's just, I think it starts with education the same way that I talk about the Black community and BLM. It starts with a knowledge of education of this is not, like, what we were taught in school doesn't tell the full story. It doesn't even tell half the story. And it's time for everybody to really do their own research, but for us to also change the organizations and the systems and the structures that enforce this one narrative that Canada was established like this. And so anyways, with Canada Day approaching, it's literally a week away now. This is just not sitting with me right. I'm like, and I've always been the one in the past, maybe now so more so out of ignorance, to kind of like, yeah, woohoo, Canada Day. But now I'm like, I don't know if I want to celebrate Canada Day this year. Like with everything, with all the recent information coming to light, I'm like, I don't think this is a celebratory day. If anything, this is almost a day of mourning. Like, there's a lot taken away from a community. That's all. I gotta stop there.
Yeah,
No, you said everything that I was thinking. So thank you, 100%. And I think one of the really important things that you touched on was that you had an interaction with an actual Indigenous person. So it was like someone impacted your life and impacted it in a way that switched your story. And I think a lot of the things that happens is that people don't take the time to diversify their sphere. So they only hang out with people that look like them, or they only hang out with people who have like-minded ideas as them. And it's like, okay, well, that's enough. Like, now it's time to diversify your circle, and it's time to do your own research. And like you said, Canada Day isn't a day of celebration for the vast majority of marginalized communities. Like, it's not something that we should celebrate. It's something that we should recognize. And on that day, instead of celebrating that we're all together, we need to take time to recognize the marginalized groups that are being affected and how they're being affected.
So there's Chiamanda Adichie is an author who, if you haven't had a chance, I say go out and watch her TED Talks on the danger of a single story. And so it speaks to a little bit about what you're speaking about, and what you mentioned as well, Sav, the single narrative, the single story, and it begins to have you ask the questions: whose story are we telling? You know, who has the power to tell this story? Whose stories are excluded, right, from some of these narratives, right? Because stories are being told, and it's not necessarily a full story. It is a full story from one perspective, right? So it is a full story, just a story that's from one perspective. And so the danger of a single story is something to be mindful of when we're hearing a story, a narrative about Indigenous folks, a narrative about women, a narrative about whoever, and starting to question, okay, well, who's telling the story? You know, what's the perspective? What's the angle that the story is being told? We should be inquisitive. It's not that we don't trust everyone, but we should be starting to question the backgrounds, like the platforms, all of the above, right? So to your point, T, about, you know, okay, great, you're telling me you hear me, you see me. Well, what are your actions saying, and what single story are informing your actions moving forward, right? To think about that, think about diversifying your friend group, your social circles. What single story is guiding all of those decisions? So something to think about. And I appreciate you touching on that, T, because I know, you know, we talked about Saskatchewan quite a bit. As you could, what did they say out there, that there's always the joke that you could, you know, your dog could run for 3 miles and you could still see, you know, for 2 days and you could still see.
2 days and you could see them.
I'll say on behalf of, you know, everyone, Title League, obviously the Raptors 905 and the Raptors organization, like, not only are our thoughts and prayers with everyone and the families and the histories there, but for everyone who is, you know, making an attempt to make change. It's time. I think that's, you know, it's not enough said, but I'll leave it there. It's time, period. So let me ask you this, moving from necessary to onwards, it's a little perspective. The NBA finals are happening right now. The NBA playoffs are happening right now.
Yeah.
Do you have a team outside of the Toronto Raptors, as they got the 4th pick? I got it. But do you have a team that you're following right now and you're saying, I think I like this. This is my bet. Like I would bet on T crying over Luka, which I'm gonna which I'm gonna watch, by the way. I'm gonna watch it because I saw it and I'm like, I might cry too. And if I do, I'll let you know, because it's okay to cry. But do you have a team that you're betting on?
First, let's talk about you crying. It is Men's Mental Health Week, so
Absolutely. That's why I said it's okay.
Get your tears out. It's time to refurbish.
Yeah.
It's time to refresh.
Yes.
Get all those emotions out. I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Yes, you are, because you're not. The Raptors are not in, so you're allowed to be a basketball fan.
But I don't think that that's a thing. And to be honest, I wouldn't take my bets. I wouldn't take my bets. I have favorite players and I have favorite teams.
No bets, then favorite players and favorite teams.
Right now, I am a huge Trae Young fan. I love a gritty boy. I love some trash talk. I love when it comes from the unexpected. So I'll leave it at Trae Young is one of my boys to watch.
All right, Hawks it is.
There we go. I'm converted. I'm converted for now to the Hawks. I love what they're doing. You also mentioned John Wiggins. You said part of that John Wiggins mentorship tree, which, you know, I put myself under at times as well. Not at times, all the time, except for when he knocks my beef ribs. But otherwise, talk about that relationship. Talk about how important it is for mentorship, not only that you're receiving, but you as a mentor as well. What is that like for you? How important is that for you?
I think John Wiggins is the ideal leader. So if you ever get a chance to talk to him or be around him, I highly recommend it. I think he showed me exactly how you lead, how you communicate with people, how you treat people. Wiggins is the best. He's my guy. How do I go forward in my mentorship? It's the exact thing that he went with me. Like, if you show me that you're going to try your best, then I will try my best for you. And it's worked thus far because we still have a relationship. He left me to go to the Raptors and be a big time there and do great things. But we still have like a regular communication, and he's still teaching me how to be a professional in this space. And I think having, like we mentioned, a diverse perspective benefited both of us so greatly because we're both marginalized groups and neither of us had the true perspective of those groups until we collided. And then I think that just makes you a stronger person, both professionally and personally.
There's strength in numbers and there is strength in diversity. Love it.
One thing that I admire about Tenneya is that, for one, she's a whole queen. I don't care. I'm going to hype you up. But two, I saw you like in action at your best when you were working with the students of La Loche in the community out there from your home province, Saskatchewan. But you brought them around Toronto. You showed them a great thing. Like, talk about the highlights of what it was like to work with that program.
Oh, you're picking at my heartstrings. La Loche is my whole heart. So being in Toronto, it is a little bit of an Indigenous desert. I came from Saskatchewan, which is like, indigeneity is everywhere. You can find it at any point in time. While there are things that they need to work on, you can still find your kinship somewhere. Here it's a little bit different. It's a little bit fewer and farther between. So when I was given the opportunity to work with Giants of Africa and bring people from my home province and Indigenous youth to Toronto, I was ecstatic. I cannot stress how much I adore La Loche. They changed my perspective. They changed the way that I saw Toronto. They changed everything. So I am forever grateful for them. I think from that tragedy that happened with La Loche, which is why Giants of Africa started working with them, came great things. So now they get exposure to Toronto and they get new experiences, and then they get to show off what they can do, which is the whole point of sport, is to include and to encourage everyone and to build communities. And the fact that it's a community in Saskatchewan does not hurt.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and you said it. They get exposure, but people get exposure to them, and that's also very important, right? Is that people are looking. It's a two-way street. Let's just say it that way. What are some of the? I mean, talk about your community growing up. What was it like for you? Like, share your experiences living in Saskatchewan, where again your dog can be seen for miles and miles, because it's flat. For all those that don't know, it's not anything, but geographically it's flat.
Geographically, it's very, very flat. Yes, except for in the south with Cypress Hills.
There you
But I
go. See, you
there you
debunked a
go.
myth. So you can find your dog anywhere except for there. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
except for
Nice.
that, and the boreal forest. But like that's okay. So my experience in Saskatchewan. So I am mixed. So I am surrounded by a plethora of different perspectives at all times. And I went to a predominantly white school. So predominantly I was around people who aren't like me and who didn't understand race the way that I did from a young age, or who didn't experience racism or this, that, and the other. So for me, it was a lot of like hiding my indigeneity. I didn't embrace it to the full extent. I like many other marginalized communities, I wanted the blonde hair and the blue eyes and the fair complexion. And then as I got older, you start to recognize what makes you different and what makes you unique, and then you start to love yourself in a different way. So I think from elementary and high school, a whole different person. I think it's an experience where you're trying to fit in so bad that you kind of stifle your ownness, your own something special, your own spice. And then once I was able to go to college, because I went to university in Calgary for my first year, I was able to like see what it looks like to be an Indigenous person in a different province. And my aunt at the time, shout out Auntie Janice, hello. She was living in Tsuut'ina Nation, which is a reserve that is in almost in the center of Calgary. And I was able to visit so regularly and just express myself and be my true self in that atmosphere that I was like, oh, right, we need to reconnect. And since then, it's just been an avalanche or snowball effect from there.
You know what is interesting to me, and something that you actually talked about in the feature that I would love to dive in a little bit more with you as well, is, you know, because you mentioned you are mixed, and so am I. I'm biracial, half white, half black. And you mentioned in the feature saying that you got to figure out what your pieces are. So I really want to pick your brain. And you mentioned also just going to a predominantly white school, as did I growing up until high school. How did you figure out your pieces?
Ooh, that's a windy road.
It is.
So I am mixed. My mom is also mixed. So my mom is half black and half white. And then my father is Indigenous. So my mixed heritage is mixed and mixed. And I think for me, which is like, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but it's a weird experience because my mom had me young. So she was also in her journey of figuring out her pieces. What does it mean to be black and white? What does it mean to be black and white on the prairies? What does it mean to be a black white mother? What does it mean to be all those things? So through watching her and her process, I was able to I think fast forwarded a little bit to be able to see like, okay, so there's intersectionality between all of these things. So it's not I'm a woman, so I can't have bias for other marginalized communities. It's our society is based off of these principles. And to me, those principles don't fit. So when I go into, I don't know, it goes to like code switching, which I think gets talked about a lot. And I think code switching for me happened a lot on basketball courts, happened a lot in professional settings. And then as I got older, I just stopped code switching. Like you'll catch me every once in a while code switching, but for the most part, what you see is what you get. And in finding those pieces and that confidence, I think I should give the majority of the credit of finding my pieces to my mom, because she was the leader, the first person to do so. And she gave me a great example of what that looks like. So doing the research in your background. So what does your community look like? Doing the research, not only within yourself, but with your community. So finding people who can give you a different perspective and not denying one side of you. So I am part white. There is a white part of me. And I understand that is a part that I need to recognize and not diminish or let go of, but embrace and encourage those people who are also mixed to encourage that part of them as well. So it's a very long-winded ramble to say it was hard. And there were definitely times where I neglected my mixedness and just pretended or leaned on my racial ambiguity.
Yeah, I think, and I'm relating 1000% to this because, you know, being biracial myself, it's like I feel like I have the privilege also of seeing multiple perspectives, having been around multiple different communities. And so like, and in one sense I can understand the perspective of, like, for example, the white side of my family and the way they have, you know, viewed other issues, other topics in the past. And then on the other side of my black side of the family, you know, I could understand where they're coming from, and like also, I don't want to say bridge the gap at all, because it's not that, because everybody comes to their own education, but better communicate, maybe like on certain topics and in certain situations. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it is important that we recognize all of our pieces.
100%. I think that's exactly it. You're not bridging the gap. You're adding a diverse perspective, right? Like
Absolutely.
you're adding your spice or your your perspective on what this looks like. And I think recently there was something that happened that I became very clear that I was also biased or blinded by my own ignorance. So there was a Sephora campaign that was launched, and I was ecstatic because I never seen myself in media before. So I was like, oh my goodness, Shayla Olette is in this. Like, all of these people are in this. I'm so excited. Two Spirit people are in this. Like, this is me. I'm so excited. And then because I allow myself to have diverse input and diverse voices on my social medias and who I speak to and all of those things, I was able to find out that that's not enough, that voices were left out, that Afro-Indigenous voices were completely left off the spectrum. And I had to check myself, because I was like, this is not right. They're not second tier. They are Indigenous people. My children will be Afro-Indigenous. Like, that will be part of their story. So I think it's not only like a lesson for all of these other groups, it's for everyone. We're always constantly learning, and your pieces change all the time.
I think that's what just makes you so amazing, is the fact that like you're willing to be open-minded and learn and take in other perspectives, and that knowing that you don't just have the all-encompassing perspective. There's so many voices out there that need to be considered and weighed as well. And something that you recently taught me in that interview actually was, you talked about the term powwow and how casually it's thrown. I was not even aware that that was something that cannot be casually thrown until it clicked in my head. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that was just okay. Like, you have to call it out. These types of things have to be recognized, and you have to be okay with humbling yourself as well, to know that there's a lot that you don't know as well. So I commend you for that, for recognizing that as well.
Thank you. 100% the powwow thing. I'm going to take the credit for it right now, but I got it.
Absolutely.
I got it from a conversation. All the credit goes to me. And thank you for recognizing that. That's huge. I think where that comes from is the Raptors are great in inclusivity, and we did a book series on Tanya Talega's 7 Fallen Feathers, and she came and spoke to us, or virtually spoke to us, I should say, and she pointed out all of the words, all of the Indigenous words. And I always like knew powwow, like obviously that's something that I attend, but then when she started listing them, it's like how severe it is, like Mohawk, Cherokee, Chiefs, Blackhawks, anything that's related to that, Redskins, all of those things, and are so passively used in everyday language that it's easy to turn a blind eye and just be like, oh yeah, that's just part of our vernacular, that's just part of our language. But it's not.
Take it one step further. Not just passively used, they're labeled to market cars, sports teams, right? Like that, you're just bombarded with it, even from a marketing standpoint. It's not just in our language; it's in how we sell, it's in how we live, right? When you think about it that way. And so Sav raises the point, like the education pieces, because there is the other side, and I'm seeing this a ton over the last while in working with different groups, that some people just really don't know. And it's not to say that that's okay, but they actually just don't know. So there's like an education piece where someone says, hey, come powwow with me for a minute or whatever. They may not really understand where that came from. And so we have to do our job. And this is where, you said it too, T, that, you got to diversify your groups, your social circles a little bit. It's not like you got to have dinner with somebody different every day night of the week, but certainly expose yourselves, be willing to expose yourselves to multiple views. And if you're not in that place, then start reading and start educating yourself. Go, TED Talks has lots of resources. Like, I mean, there's ways to do it. So back to my statement earlier, there's no more excuses. Like, there's tons of opportunity for us to do it. So I love that point. I love that you bring that up. um, I don't know if if people are going to be able to see, uh, but you have no your earrings.
Oh,
Your talk about them.
they were a gift from my mom, the mixed woman herself. My mom is a huge resource. So she grew up on the prairies, Alberta and BC, and she was able to gain a deep knowledge of Indigenous practices and respectful ways of including yourself into those groups because of my dad. So we do a lot of Indigenous teaching because it's something that is important to my dad, but it's also important to my mom because she has mixed race girls. So for my entire existence, like we smudge before, instead of doing prayer before major family dinners, and we go to powwows, and it's very important that we attend ceremony and that kind of stuff. And she does it inadvertently, so it's not in your face being like, this is a part of you, this is what you need to do. It should just be like, it's just everyday practice. So I think 2 summers ago, I hadn't been home in a really long time. So my mom was like, this is a piece that you can take with you so that you can always have a part of Saskatchewan with you. So these are a huge deal to me. So thank you for noticing them.
Oh, you can't not notice them. They're gorgeous.
And I think you said an important thing right there. You just said that it's everyday practice, and I'll just keep reiterating because I think it's important that like equity work and being let's use the term equitable again, is everyday practice. It's not like a side menu. I'm going to order my main and I'll order some apps on the side. Like it's not one of those things. It's habits. It's, a part of how you should live. It's a part of how you need to teach if you're a teacher. It's a part of how you need to, run a business if you're a business leader. It's a part of how you need to, I'm going to say this, I never give parenting advice, but how you should raise you raise your kids, it's just a part of how you should live, right? It's just an everyday thing. It's not one of, I can check this box, I do that. If that makes sense.
100%.
Absolutely. Just to like add on to that, like shout out to your mom, Tenneya, because like I know, we both we all live in a world where like I feel like it's becoming more and more common, I'll just call it out right now, the fetishization of mixed kids. And a lot of times the parent who is of like the white culture, they don't know Black culture, they don't know the other side. And so it's a lack of education, but then you have kids who are of like these multiple backgrounds, and you need to teach them what their other heritage is as well. And so I love the fact that your mom just practiced it on a daily basis, and like she made sure that you were aware of your cultural backgrounds as well. So honestly, I'm just in awe of your story so far, and just keeps on getting better and better and better.
Yeah, huge shout out to Melanie. Hello, Mom.
Hello, Mom. I think I'll be out in Saskatchewan. Actually, we'll talk with our CBR Guelph Nighthawks team this year.
I'm trying to overlap with you.
Yeah, we talked about that. So there's fans out there, right, on the West Coast now. I think they're pretty open. But I have a question for you. What's next for Tenneya?
Big question. What's next? Who knows? Really? Who knows? I didn't think I'd make it this far, to be quite honest.
You were supposed to be a nurse somewhere, and now you're sitting here. What's going on?
I don't know. I should be running a nonprofit somewhere in Alberta. No, I kind of, as you guys know, go where the wind takes me. So right now, I think a huge focus for me is marginalized groups, including them into our sphere, seeing who's not at the table and bringing them in. So I think I can do that at any position that I choose to go to, but I think that's the focus. The focus is, I didn't see myself I still don't see myself in basketball. I don't walk into rooms and feel comfortable. I don't walk into spaces and be like, oh, I feel at home. And I don't want anyone else to feel that way. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that every person walks into the room and at least sees that it's a complete diverse platter. So you can't find two of the same or whatever, but you can be one of that platter. I think anywhere that I go, that's the objective.
Absolutely.
I just want to touch on one thing, and then I'm going to flip to the side. But the good news is, you don't see yourself, but just I would always say to people see you. So make sure, don't lose sight of the fact that there is a young person, of Indigenous descent out in Saskatchewan, out in BC, somewhere in Northern Canada, who sees you and says, wow, I want that. I want to be like her. I already want to be like you, and I'm not from Saskatchewan. But do you understand that, right? So don't lose sight of that either. Is that there's that sacrifice, but you found your purpose. So that's pretty cool.
I think I'm gonna have to give up the buns if people are starting to to see me. I think I'm gonna have to step up the game, get it together a little bit more.
No game needed, no step up needed. You're gorgeous as is. But I know, just to add on to Charles Kissey's point, like, it's kind of funny in my own journey, like, I didn't even know that being on air was possible for in like within the NBA landscape, within reporting landscape, because I didn't see myself. And so it's interesting with your story, and like you getting, like, you're sharing it, you're getting exposure, you're holding space in these rooms, and it's not just representing for for your people, but people could, even on a subconscious level, see you there and be like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't even know that I could be a team coordinator. What? And then what's exciting for me is to see, like, you obviously you're still figuring out what the next step is from here, but I really do hope that in the future you're just elevated and you have more leadership and change and having decision-making positions granted to you as well, because I think that your voice is so important to have at the table every single time, to get different perspectives, and because you do get different results as a result.
Well, thank you both. I feel like the reason that I get to have such a diverse perspective is because I get to hang out with you guys who are both making huge changes in your areas. Sav, congratulations on that WNBA show. It looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah. And Kissy with the head coaching position. I mean, come on. There's only 4 in the finals. There's only 4 Black men in the finals who are head coaches. So you guys are making change on your own rights. Don't forget to recognize your game.
Yeah, I think small victories. I said to a group this morning, when a child, and we'll all appreciate this whether we have children or not, but when a child takes his first steps, we celebrate, or does something small, we celebrate, right? And I think as they get older, we kind of forget to celebrate. I walk now, no one's like, "Hey, he took a step." It's not a thing, right? But I always say, let's not forget to celebrate. And my point here is going to be, let's not forget to celebrate the small victories as we move forward in the work that we're all doing. And knowing that there's still so much more work to be done, right? Let's start continuing to try, and if we're going to focus on the Indigenous community, to look at the positives, knowing that there's so much hardship there, but there's so many great elements of that culture and community that we should be spending more time shedding light on, so that it doesn't always feel heavy. Because I don't think Tenneya's, she's proud. She's not like, oh, it sucks to be Indigenous. Like, no, I think, it's a proud community. So let's not forget that either, and celebrate those steps along the way as we get longer and further down that path, knowing that, sometimes those steps are hard steps, but we have to celebrate them as well. And I think we need more of that. I want to see more in not only Indigenous faces, but more celebration, more of all the great things and that are a part of their culture. And I'm not talking like, dancing and music. I'm talking the individual people who do great things like Tenneya is doing on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be this big, Caravana style thing. Forget that. I'm talking about day to day, who's doing what and how, and all the great things that are happening. So I almost leave you with that. And I say, Tenneya, thank you so much for your time, for your openness, for being vulnerable. I know it's a really tough time. It is for you. It certainly is for all of us. And it should be for the rest of the country. And then we need to say to ourselves, all right, now what? What are we going to do moving forward? And so, T, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.